the rhythm of prospecting is no, 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 yes. Ranjan and I, we had a financial agreement, and there came a point where I was holding his money and I had to release the money. But sometimes when somebody's holding your money, they don't release it. So
Eric is here to stay for 20 years. And in our conversation, Eric decided that Ranjan, let's play a 20-year game. And I'm here to serve with all my experience, all my knowledge, all my expertise, and I'm willing to learn everything about India. Hey Eric, welcome to my show, Moments with Masters, and I love I would love to introduce you to our viewers first before we dive into the conversation for the day. Eric Lofholm is a master sales trainer who has taught his proven sales systems to thousands of professionals around the world. He is the president and CEO of Eric Lofholm International Inc., an organization he founded to professionally train people on the art and science of selling. Eric has been teaching people how to make more sales since 1999. Eric began his career as a sales failure. At his first sales job, he was put on quota probation after failing to meet the minimum quota 2 months in a row. It was at this point that Eric met his sales mentor. After being professionally trained, Eric achieved his quota and eventually became the top producer at the company. Eric went on to become the top producer at two more companies prior to starting Eric Lofholm International. And the huge long list of his accomplishments, but still I would love to cover all of his accomplishments. 30 plus years in commissioned sales, 24 plus years professionally training salespeople, made over 10,000 sales, generated over 10,000 referrals, made over 1 lakh cold calls, booked over 5,000 appointments, logged over 60,000 hours of time either selling or teaching sales, led over 1,000 training webinars and conference calls, trained over 10,000 salespeople, trained salespeople in over 20 countries, written 15 books, created 10 home study courses, done over 500 podcast episodes, and created over 100 sales training videos. And he lives in Rockland, CA with his wife and children. Eric, welcome to my show, Moments with Masters, and you are the master of the day.
Well, it is great to be here. I'm excited to be able to spend some time with you and for all of our listeners.
Eric, there's something interesting in your bio, which says that after you were put on at your first sales job, you were put on a quota probation after failing to meet the minimum quota 2 months in a row, and then you met your sales mentor. I would love to listen about that point of time in your life.
Yeah, well, I went to go into sales to work for a real estate investor, and I was in my early 20s, and he was very wealthy. And I thought, if I can go be around this wealthy person, maybe it will rub off on me, some of his success, some of his ideas. And I didn't go there to do sales. I went there to associate with this very successful man. And when I was introduced to the opportunity, they said, you need to sell. I was like, okay, I'll sell. That's fine. And I didn't know anything about sales. I was never properly trained. And then I was put on the quota probation, which meant that I had missed the minimum standard of $10,000 in gross sales 2 months in a row. And I met arguably the brightest sales mind living today. His name is Dr. Donald Moyne, and he's just a brilliant sales consultant. And he has a systems approach to selling. And so I was introduced to his system, and I hit the quota that next month that I was on quota probation. And then I did 5 times quota the following month, becoming the top producer. And so for me, it was once I was professionally trained, that made all the difference for me. So that's a little bit about what was happening at that point in my life.
So, tell me, Eric, like, in spite of producing great results in sales, you can't sustain yourself in sales for such a long time. So, unless you're inspired to be in sales. So I would love to understand what truly inspired you to continue in the sales career.
Yeah. Well, I was newly married, and so I needed to provide for my wife. And my part of my natural gifting is not sales, but it's teaching. I love teaching and I love encouraging. And so what ended up happening was when Dr. Moyne trained me, I started teaching my coworkers how to sell. And I wasn't a consultant back then. I was just teaching out of the love of teaching. And after that job finished up, I went and worked for Tony Robbins, the world famous motivational speaker. And I decided that I wanted to go into the speaking field and training field. And I ended up teaching sales. And so my last 25 years of my career, the sales that I've done has been me selling sales training. And so I can do my love, which is like what we're doing right now. I get to share my experience. I get to mentor, coach, and teach others. And so I think the core motivation was being able to teach and train. And had I not met Dr. Moyne, I probably wouldn't have made it in sales. And I likely would have found a way to train, maybe be a corporate trainer in some other area of expertise. But I happen to have this amazing mentor that taught me sales, and I've been able to do that for my career.
Rick, one of the earliest careers that I launched myself into when I started my professional life was sales, and I was one of the first sales representative of a top Indian company, Eureka Forbes in down South India. And I still remember my first few days into sales, and it was very, it wasn't something that came naturally to me. It wasn't that something I was interested in, and it was hard. You knocking on the doors and you inviting people into conversations and to sell products that were very expensive. And but most importantly, I knew how reluctant I was to talk to people and how reluctant I was to knock on the doors, and feeling hurt when people wouldn't answer your calls, or people would humiliate you or insult you, and they'll just shoo you away. And that was something that was very new to me. I see in your profile, on your bio, that you have made over 1 lakh cold calls. And that's something really fascinating for me from your experience. And I would love to learn about your experience with cold calls and anything that you can share about making cold calls.
Yeah, it's a great question. And what you experienced is what I experienced too, and probably all of our listeners, right? It's that fear of rejection. And my sister's a nurse. So she shows up for work, she gets, an hourly wage. The patients come to her. She's not dealing with rejection. It's just she just goes in and does her job. But for us that are selling, we're having to approach people that tell us no, with regularity. And in the early days, I did it because it was my job and I had to, I had bills to pay like most people do, but I still had fear and I still had anxiety. And after I'd been doing it for about 10 years, it dawned on me that what was creating the anxiety was me anticipating how the other person was going to respond. So if I'm getting ready to call somebody, whether it's somebody in my database, a previous client, a current client, a cold call, and I'm imagining, well, what's this person going to say when I ask them for an appointment? Well, the rhythm of prospecting is no, 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 yes. And what that means is when I reach out to somebody, they're probably going to say no. And then the next person's going to say no. And the next person, and it's just a series of no's. And then eventually I get a yes. And so if I'm imagining how the person's going to respond, and I understand the pattern of no, 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 yes, I'm gonna be like, well, they're probably going to say no. And now I'm coming from fear. So here's what I figured out. Instead of focusing on the other person and how they're going to respond, focus on my activity. And I started gamifying my prospecting. And what that means is I would play a game like reach out to 25 people today to grow my business. And every time I reached out to somebody, I would pat myself on the back, and not always literally. Sometimes I would acknowledge myself just quietly in my mind. And so if I was going to reach out to 25 people today, it's 25 wins. And if I book 4 appointments, it's 4 double wins. So when I prospect, I win. When I book the appointment, I double win. I win no matter what. So 25 reach outs is 25 wins. 4 appointments is 4 double wins. In other words, 25 plus 4 is 29. 29 wins, 0 losses. Most people don't acknowledge the reach outs as a win. So most people would be 21 losses and 4 wins. And they're absorbing energetically this negativity, this fear, this resistance, while I'm going along all day, every day, winning and succeeding. And so that shifted my thinking. Anytime I tap into focusing on my activity and not how the other person's going to respond, it allows me to fearlessly prospect. And I'll boldly prospect anybody. And I've taught this to many people. And if it resonates with them, they come to the realization that prospecting is actually very easy.
Eric, I would like to share my experience of the evolution of understanding of selling in my own experience. And over the last 30 years that I've been teaching or training or coaching and speaking, I had a certain understanding and a definition of selling 30 years ago, and which kept evolving over these last few decades. 20 years ago I had a certain other kind of understanding of sales. Today I have certain, and uh, earlier I was being pushy. I was trying, I thought that people don't need your products or services, and you have to convince them, you have to persuade them, and you have to push for your products and sales, and several psychological barriers over there. And then gradually my understanding of sales or selling something evolved, and then I realized that you're never not selling. Whether you are speaking, whether you are coaching, whether you are training, whether you are at home with family or with your friends, there is something that you're selling. But then when it comes to professional selling, you suddenly start thinking that this is something different from what you're doing in the other context. So this was my understanding, and evolution of my understanding. I would love to listen about what's been selling for you throughout your life, and what is selling for you now?
That is a brilliant question, because I've asked audiences all over the world the question of, what do you think of when you think of a salesperson? And the common answers, it doesn't matter the country that I'm in, the common answers are, when I think of a salesperson, I think of arm twisting, high pressure, manipulation, liar, slick, fast talker. And so if somebody thinks of sales in that way, that's a position to come from. So they're going to enter the sales conversation over Zoom, over the phone, WhatsApp, in person, however they're communicating. They're going to be coming from a position of that. And that is not a powerful position to come from. And it's not going to allow the most confident version of you to come out, the highest expression of yourself. And what I learned over the years is to shift the thinking and come from selling equals service. So when I'm selling, I'm serving the person, and I'm serving them by explaining the benefits of my product or service. And I'm going to only recommend my product or service if I truly feel that it can add value to them. And to take it a step further, where I approach life now, my life is about serving the person that's in front of me all day long. So right now, you're in front of me, as well as our future listeners when they listen to the recording. And so right now in this moment, I'm here to serve you and all the listeners. When this call's done, I have a training that I'm going to be delivering for one of my corporate clients, and I'll be serving them. And whether it's my children, my wife, my neighbor asked me yesterday for a referral to an insurance company. So I'll be serving my neighbor. And so if we can step into service, which that's something everybody can embrace. And if you can go, okay, sales is a hat that I wear in business. There's times when I meet with somebody to explain the benefits of my product or service, the benefits of joining my company, the benefits of investing with me if you're raising investment capital, the benefits of this particular deal and why it's in your best interest to do it. And if we come from service, it can unlock something, unleash something in somebody that will literally transform them. And it's instant. And this is the conversation that I've been in for the last 30 years. I've studied masters. I continue to work with masters, read the books, listen to the podcast, coach with them one-on-one. I still work with Dr. Moyne, my first mentor. And I'm in this conversation all day, every day from a career standpoint. And I've discovered all these insights, just subtle things that can literally alter the trajectory of somebody's future. And so I love the opportunity to come on and have this conversation, especially when we can record it so others can benefit in the future.
Eric, there's something that I learned from our common coach, Steve Hardison. Uh, we have traveled together in the creation of the Ultimate Experience India, and I was fortunate enough to be coached by him for over 25 hours in that journey. And I remember a day I called him, and we were talking about sales, and he said, Ranjan, do you know what am I doing here? And I said, yeah, Steve, what? And he said, like, I'm creating clients, and and do you want to see how? And I said, of course, yes. And he showed me a dead tree, and he showed me, do you see this tree, the dry stems and everything of the tree? It was dead. And I said, yes, I see. And then he showed me something on the ground, everything's all dead leaves and everything around. And he showed me, do you know what am I doing here? And I said, as usual, I don't understand what you're doing there, so please let me know. And he said, I'm creating clients, and I want you to see how I'm creating clients. And I said, yes, I would love to. And he said, this is not my home. This is my neighbor's home. And I was just returning from a morning walk, and I saw that, this lady might be in need of my help. And there were leaves and dust everywhere. And this tree was, probably she might have wanted to remove it, but she could not. And she might have been waiting for some help. So I knocked on her door, and I asked her that would she need my help. And she said, yes, I have asked somebody to clear that tree from there, but I'm still waiting for the help. And he said, you know what I said? Yeah, I said, yes, Steve. And he said, I offered to help, and that's what I'm doing. I am cleaning that dead tree from her garden. And so I was listening, and he said, Ranjan, do you know what this has to do with creating clients? And I said, yes, Steve. And he said, I am planting a seed of service. This is what I'm doing. And I know this is how I create clients. I plant seeds of service. And there are many things that we learn from our mentors, as you and I. I would love to learn some of the most significant things that you learned from your mentors, which really impacted you deeply in your personal and professional lives.
Yes. Well, I'll start with Dr. Moyne, who I mentioned previously, and he taught me a systematic way of selling. And one of the greatest insights was sales scripting. And one of the fascinating things about sales scripting is that if you ask people, what do you think of when you think of a sales script? They'll say canned, rehearsed, mechanical, inauthentic. It's just not me. And what he taught me was a script is words in sequence that have meaning. And what that means is if you're talking and making sense, you're using a script. In other words, winging it is a script. And many people in the world wing it because they don't want to come across salesy without realizing that winging it is actually a script. And so teaching people how to layer persuasion into a presentation to bring the benefits to life. There's all these things, and that could be a whole day-long conversation that we could have about what can you do to increase the likelihood that somebody says yes in a presentation. But I'll just share one insight, and that is to tell success stories. So my mentor taught me to strategically insert success stories into the body of my presentation. And I can tell the same stories over and over and over again, because each time I tell the story to a prospect, it's new to them, but it's not new to me. So that was one really brilliant insight. Another insight from my mentor, Jay Abraham, who's one of the top marketing minds in the world today. And he is a big believer in playing the long game. And the difference between the long game and the short game is, to me, the short game is focusing on the next 12 months, the next 9 months, the next 6 months, the next 30 days, the next week, the next hour, the next moment. It's a shorter focus. And in my experience, most people think out 5 years or less, and in business, they're really 1 year or less. And what I learned from both Tony Robbins, who I worked for 3 years, and from Jay Abraham, is to play the long game. And a simple way of explaining the long game is to think in decades. So I have this app on my phone, and it's a count up or count down app, and it's called Final Countdown. And this is the app here. And I have a date that I put down called Last Productive Day. And my last productive day is September 13th, 2065, which is a little over 40 years from now. That's how long I plan on being a sales trainer, a sales strategist, and that's how long I plan on leading the being movement until my last breath. So I'm thinking multiple decades in the future, and it doesn't cost anything to think decades into the future. It's just a way of thinking. And then the last example I'll share of learning from a mentor, Steve Hardison, who we share Steve Hardison in common. There's many, many things I've learned from Steve, but one of my favorites is to see the gold in others. And what I discovered about myself is there's certain people that when I would think of them, I would think of the negative in them, like my ex-wife. I had a lot of pain and hurt from my divorce. And Steve taught me to see the gold in others, including my ex-wife. And so I started creating her in my mind as extraordinary. And I forgave her, I forgave myself, and I let go of the hurts. And so I started treating her from a position of she's extraordinary, seeing the gold in her. And it transformed our relationship. And there's probably many people that will listen to this that have a past relationship that they have hurts over, and they couldn't imagine seeing the extraordinary, thing in their previous partner. But I can tell you from experience that that's been a game changer for me, and not just with her. It's see the gold in others, and that's for everybody. So those are a couple of insights that have been life-changing insights for me.
Eric, this reminds me, when you spoke about the long game, this reminds me of something, I think it's about 6 or 7 years ago. I declared my niche as authentic influence. And when I declared that here in India, and I put that on my social media and everywhere, my profile, that this is my niche, authentic influence. I'm creating a worldwide community of authentic influencers. And my coaching is around authenticity. People, I my own friends and people from my network, this is so abstract and people won't accept it. And you know you are taking a big risk on by declaring an abstract thing as your niche, and how would you coach people on that, and several things. It's been around 6 years, and now I know that I have messages coming from our own group from different countries. They say, like, I'm interested in this, I love what you're sharing. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing this authenticity in the titles of people, in their businesses, in their professions, and I'm loving that. And then even some of them share with me that I'm an authentic business coach now, I'm authentic, some criteria, let's say. And so I love, the long game takes a longer and a bigger and a deeper commitment. And yes, you don't see results immediately, but the impact is very profound, and on a scale that is unimaginable. My question to you is, what's been your experience from the moment that you made this shift from short, goals to this playing the long game? What's been your experience of life, and everything in business and personal life?
Well, I think the first time, I guess I created it in my first marriage, but from a business standpoint, when I launched my sales training company, I was 28 and nobody had heard of me. And I had a crummy business plan and a bad website. And I built an international training company to the point where people like you have me on their show. And this is a show about masters. It's like, Eric, you've come a long way, And so that was created out of the long game, because I looked at the sales training landscape when I was 28. The big players were Zig Ziglar, Jeff Gitomer, and Tom Hopkins, and they were all getting older. And I thought, who is going to step forward from my generation to fill those shoes? And the answer I got was, whoever puts the repetitions in, the speaking repetitions, the coaching repetitions, they're going to develop the skill set to fill those shoes. And so I'm in my 26th year now, and I have repped everybody else in the industry from my generation. I've done more one-on-one coaching and more speaking, and it's opened up doors where I've had the privilege of speaking all over the world, being on shows like this. And then all that experience led to what I'm doing with Steve Hardison and the Being Movement. I'm endorsed by people like Brian Tracy and Jay Abraham, which I'm really proud of those endorsements, two of the top trainers in the world. And that's all been created out of the long game. And what it does for people is it conveys trust without me having to say I'm trustworthy. It conveys commitment without me having to say I'm committed. Because it's like, wow, you've been doing the same thing now for this many years, and you plan on doing it for another 40 plus years. And there's a lot that's communicated out of that declaration. I planted my flag. This is what I'm going to do for my life. And it's something worth considering for all the listeners, whether you're in insurance or you're a coach, you're in real estate, you're in financial services, whatever you do for a career, is to consider planting your flag, thinking in decades, and playing the long game. And those thoughts, they can change the trajectory of your future.
Brilliant. Rick, there's one more thing that I'm reminded of at this point. There are sales experts or people who have seen life in sales, and business leaders. There are people who focus on the systems, and they are like systems are the most important thing if you really want to create results. And then there are people who who who, who themselves want to evolve as leaders and then want to have systems installed which resonate with them and with the kind of results that they are looking for. Now, with the advent of technology and artificial intelligence and a lot of automation that's being done, I had Justin Michael on my show last time, and he's like the king of technology, and he's awesome in that. He plays that A game. However, he's deeply playing, a human centric game through technology. Now, with the speed at which technology is being accepted, embraced in sales, uh, how do you see the you know the retention of still a human-centric approach, uh, having this technology actually playing the game?
Yeah. Um, I don't know that I've given a whole lot of thought to that. I am embracing technology in my own business. And just in the last couple weeks, we installed some new software, which ended up booking quite a few appointments. But it's still very much relationship focused. In my company, the way we're using technology is in efficiency, helping us schedule more appointments, helping us have a better connection with our existing database. It'll be interesting to see, how AI evolves, because right now there are levels of strategy that I'm not aware that AI has got to yet, but maybe one day it will. I'm not really sure how it's all going to unfold. I don't I don't have a deep expertise around AI. But I also think of us as human beings as like our brain is like our own AI. And if you think about like AI keeps getting smarter, and I'm a big believer in continuous sales improvement. And that's actually the title of the most recent book that I wrote. And it's basically implying that I can keep upgrading my brain. And just like AI can keep upgrading themselves. And so, I am a lifelong learner, and I'll continue to learn for the rest of my life. I don't really know what the future is going to hold with how technology is gonna impact everything, but I'm just going to continue to upgrade myself, and so I can be the best version of me.
I agree with you, Eric. And there's been a huge, loud conversation going on about uh, personalization of the sales process, and which 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 we are trying to leverage technology to to see how we can personalize it to an extent that we can sell our products or services. And on the other side, we have in-person communication, conversations, where we hold space and we persuade and we sell our products and services. So what's been your experience and understanding of the role that a conversation plays in creating a sale?
Well, the way I look at it, it's a lot of business mirrors a romantic relationship. So when I met my wife, I met her on a dating app called Match.com. And the first sale was getting her to engage with me through the app, because I'm just one of thousands of people on this app. So we started engaging. And then the next sale was to get her cell phone number so I could communicate with her outside of the app. And then the next sale was to agree for us to meet in person. And this way of thinking, I call it stage selling. And you're selling the person to the next step. And so business relationships mirror that. you and I have, I don't know how long our relationship goes back now, maybe a year. And what's great about that year is we have a foundation of trust to build on to this meeting that we're having right now. And on today's meeting, we both had an agreement to show up at a certain time, and we both showed up on time. And we're both here and we're adding value to each other, which every time somebody makes an agreement and there's a follow through, it increases trust. So every time we do what we say, like you and I, we had a financial agreement that was thousands of dollars, right? Where I was processing credit cards on behalf of you. And there came a point where I had to send the money to the hotel, which was our agreement. And then it's like, cross my fingers. I hope Eric sends the money.
Yeah.
because without going into all the details for all the listeners, Ranjan and I, we had a financial agreement, and there came a point where I was holding his money and I had to release the money. But sometimes when somebody's holding your money, they don't release it. so that's like, it accelerates the trust. And so in relationships, so much happens based on trust. Steve Hardison and I, in our relationship, we've done many, many agreements, no contract. And we haven't even shook hands on it because he lives in Arizona and I live in a different state. I live in California, but we just have an agreement that we both honor the agreement, and we can work at a very rapid speed in our agreement of each other. And so it's very important that we're our word in our relationships, and that we can, if we follow through and do what we say, it opens up more possibility, to the point now where you and I have reached a relationship where you're willing to share me on your show, which is like a sacred thing. Like, you're giving me your stamp of approval to introduce me. And so our relationship has reached that level. And then it likely will continue on because we're both committed entrepreneurs and we have a trust for each other, and there's likely more doors that we're going to open. And so that's it's like thinking about the long game in business relationships, and potentially people will open up their network to you in a referral relationship, or they'll favor you with their business, or whatever the case may be. And that probably won't be changed by AI. It'll just, relationships will always be a part of life. And certain people will have that ability to open up those doors for us. So those are my thoughts.
Since you spoke about relationships, when Steve was coaching me through this process, and at one point he asked, like, Ranjan, can I coach you on something? And I said yes. And I think this was one of the first things he shared with me. Ranjan, did you see, when somebody says something to you which you don't like or something, you are taking that as a threat to your integrity. And if you just see this, if you just notice this, and if you just work on this, that it's not about your integrity, it's what they're sharing, and it's about how you're listening. It's just that. And if you can make a little change over there, probably you can improve your relationship, and you can have a beautiful relationship, and you can forgive them, whoever you think have hurt you. They're just being them. And if you hold space, they aren't probably talking about your integrity. They are just being them. And so now this was as part of my creation of the Ultimate Experience India. But obviously it did help my personal relationships with my family, with my other friends, with my colleagues, with my clients, with the participants of my workshop. And it impacted me so deeply that people find this difference. So what has been the impact of what you learned from your mentors on your personal side of the life, that you feel, yes, I'm not the same Eric who I was a decade ago? I would love to listen what's been your profoundest experience that you would want to share?
Yeah, well, what you just said, it was very subtle. But if people could really hear what you just said, where Steve was saying somebody says something to you and you're feeling like they're, attacking or questioning your integrity, I think is what you said. And so then you're coming from that place and there's like this defensiveness being built up that doesn't really exist, except you are creating it, and then you shifting that transforms the relationship. And so I was in a meeting yesterday with somebody, and they came to the meeting being Eric is going to resist me. They were making a request of me, and there was no resistance. In fact, I was agreeing with them, and they responded essentially like, "Why are you resisting me?" And I'm like, "Are you listening? I'm not resisting you." They were coming from, I was resisting them because they were hearing a resistance that didn't exist. And so I had an experience with my father, and the details don't matter, but who I was being was, my father's wrong and I'm right. I'm right, he's wrong. And so that was my listening. He was, in my mind, because he was wrong, he now needs to accept responsibility and he needs to apologize. So I dug my heels in and basically said, we cannot continue our relationship, Dad, until you accept responsibility. And so I was talking with Steve about it, and he goes, your father doesn't need to accept responsibility. So in my mind, I've created, he needs to accept responsibility. And Steve goes, no, he doesn't. And I go, my dad needs to apologize. And Steve goes, no, he doesn't. And so I said, so what, do you want me just to be loving with my dad? And he goes, yeah. And it was like, wait, what? I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone, because Steve was getting me to see something that I couldn't see, because I was so stuck on, he needs to apologize, I'm right, he's wrong. So I shifted to, my dad has a perspective and I have a perspective, versus he's wrong, I'm right. And when I saw it as he has a perspective versus he's wrong, it opened things up for me. Now, as of this recording that you and I are doing right now, in a couple of days, it's Father's Day. And my dad and I are going to be going to a baseball game, celebrating Father's Day for the first time in 5 years, because of a shift in how I saw it. And so that's the beauty of having coaches, guides, consultants, and mentors, is we all have blind spots and we see life the way we see it. And Steve got me to see a different way of looking at it, which opened up my dad and I celebrating Father's Day. My father's 83, I'm 53. And there's, he will likely pass before I do. Maybe I die first, we don't know, but probably just because of his age, statistically, he'll pass first. And if that ends up happening, well, it doesn't matter who passes first. Now we're going to have a closeness in our relationship. And if anybody's listening right now, if you have a broken relationship with anybody, a family member, a friend, your parent, your kids, just take a look at what's the position that you're coming from, and understand that if you continue to hold that position, you likely will continue to have a broken relationship. If you see it as they have a perspective and you have a perspective, maybe it will open up something for you. You'll see something like how I saw something that Steve Hardison helped me see.
Very true, Eric. Eric, here's something, that I really wanted to talk about. And I wrote a book in 2003 just to see if I can be an author. and I just wanted to see myself as an author. And I had read a book called Tough Times Never Last, but Tough People Do. and I was learning about the idea management, and I read it, and then I said, wow, is that true? Like, can I write a book, and can I be a published author? And I wrote a book and it was really a miracle for me. And then I wrote my first book in English in 2017. I released it, and which recently again turned a '1 bestseller. And then I've written another 3 books. But you seem to be a writing machine, man. How many books have you written?
15 books.
15 books. My goodness. So I would love to learn about your writing journey. I'm truly curious to understand the writer in you, and what made you write so many books, and what are you still writing on?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm glad that you prefaced the question with you writing your first book, being in the inquiry, like, can I become an author? Can I really do this? Because I had a similar journey. And I always felt I could be an author, but my first book, it took me 10 years to get it to the finish line, because I was like, well, if I publish this book, it's going to do well. It's going to be successful. And I'm not a successful author. So I was suffering from imposter syndrome. And so what I did was, while I was writing this 200-page book, and I was stuck because of this thought of, well, I'm not a successful author, and if I publish it, then that will be, and it'll be a lie. So I was like, all right, I'll write a little baby book, little thin book, little 50-page book. So while I was writing the big one, I wrote a little small one just so I could be a published author. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm good enough to write a little baby book. So I did that. And then I got the larger book to the finish line. And, nowadays, Amazon.com is extremely popular, and they will essentially publish anybody. So you don't have to go get approval. You just write the book and submit it, and they'll publish it. And because Amazon is one of the top websites in the world, I advise everybody to become a published author. And it's actually one of the things that I teach people, just kind of for fun. I don't even charge people to teach them my method for writing books. I just do it as a way of adding value. But here are some ways to become a writing machine. So one is to be a co-author, and you can submit one chapter or more and have somebody else be involved in the book project. So that's one concept. Another concept, my next book that's getting ready to be released, it's a book that my mentor, Dr. Moyne, wrote called Modern Persuasion Strategies. It was the first neurolinguistic programming-based book ever in sales, and it went out of print. So I approached him and said, if I write a chapter and I put the energy behind the book, can we re-release it with me as a co-author? And he goes, sure, because here's a book that's out of print. It's not doing him any good. It's just sitting there. So that will be my 16th book. Another strategy is to hire a ghostwriter. So ghostwriter, the word ghost means their name does not appear on the book. And so I have one ghostwriter that helped me complete 4 of my books. And so all those books are my ideas, and I spoke the ideas. We had them transcribed, and then the writer, turned them into writing. So I love expressing myself in books. My main way of communicating, though, is like how you and I are communicating right now. So I can do things like this, record the content, record speeches, transcribe it, use that for the foundation of books. So you can write little small books, co-author, write a chapter in a book, ghostwriter, or sit there and write yourself. And those are the different methods that I use.
Eric, to a small, extension to the same question, I saw that, there was a personal journey of transformation that was happening even as I was writing this book. And I saw that I was not the same person who had started writing by the time I actually wrote and published. And in fact, when you shared your story, this reminded me that I had no problem. I wrote my first book, wrote and published it in less than 10 months, my first book. And the second one might have taken around 12 months. And but what I found is that my book, I was actually inspired by Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl's book, to on the meaning, and to write a book. And then I decided, let me write a book. I wrote a book, I published it. And to my surprise, my book ended up being number 2 bestseller on Amazon in the existential psychology category, right next to Man's Search for Meaning. And believe you me, I even shied away from sharing this success. And
Mhm.
for years, I was not even owning that the success of my own book. And I was not believing that this is who I am, this is what I created.
Yeah.
Until very recently, I released the revised edition, and this time it turned out to, it's to the number 1 bestseller, and I've started speaking about it. But that's one story. But the journey of writing that book definitely, I believe, has an impact on you, the way you think, the way you perceive, through that the process of writing. So what has the process of writing helped you, change in yourself or grow as a person?
I'm going to answer it a little different than how you asked it, because I think the the deeper idea here is resistance.
Mm.
And so, as I've grown as an entrepreneur, um, I've had to stare resistance down many times. And so, I was meeting with my marketing mentor, Jay Abraham, recently, and he was asking me about running ads in my business, like doing Facebook ads or YouTube ads. And I said, yeah, I've never done that. And he's like, why have you never done that? And I said, it's just, I've always done it, organically. I've never done the paid ads. And he's like, Eric, you really need to do the paid ads because you can accelerate your business much more. It's a best practice of how to grow a business. And so if I explore, why hadn't I done the paid ads? It comes down to resistance. And we do things the way we've always done them until we don't. And so when I was writing that first book and I couldn't get it published, it was the resistance that I was feeling. And so what I think the opportunity for all of us to do in exploring resistance, whether the resistance is being on video, or the resistance is being a speaker, or the resistance is publishing a book, or hiring a virtual assistant. I just hired my 2 first virtual assistants. I'd never done that before. We just started my company doing some text marketing. Never done text marketing before. Booked a bunch of appointments this week. Why hadn't we done it? Resistance. And so if we lean into resistance, and there's a great quote from Henry David Thoreau, it says, once the mind expands, it will never return to its original size. So once my mind expanded to becoming a published author, the floodgates opened. And now it's very easy to publish a book. And so I think that that's a really interesting thing for all of us to explore, all the listeners to explore. Where do you have resistance? And will you lean in and work through that resistance and establish a new comfort zone? That is an idea that could change the trajectory of your future.
Absolutely. It's so interesting that this was the last sentence, or the last thing that I spoke on my interview, when Elizabeth Cantor interviewed me for her show last month. And she said, Ranjan, what's your message for the viewers? And I said, the bigger the resistance, the bigger the possibility. And this is, I think it's serendipitous that you speak about the same thing. And Eric, uh, somebody, especially in India, across the world, but in India, when it comes to talk about motivational speakers and transformational, agents, it was like Les Brown was the king for us. And there was a time when Les Brown was an inspiration for millions in India. Of course, Tony Robbins as well, but Les Brown was that fired up guy who, Indians were in love with. You have worked with him. You have known him personally.
Yeah.
What's something that you have learned from Les Brown?
Well, I do have a personal relationship with Les, and I've spoken at his seminars, and he's spoken at my seminars, and I have him on my cell phone, so I could text him right now if I wanted to. So I'm speaking about this from a position of I personally know Les, and I've known him for many, many years. And one of the things that he said to me one day is he said, "You're the chosen one." And when he said that to me, it's Les Brown. And when he's speaking to you like that, I rejected what he was saying because how could that be true? And Les is somebody who has believed in me, and that's had a big impact on my life. And I guess I just do my best to lean into what he said, you know, and to embrace my greatness. That's one of the messages I love sharing with people is to have accurate thinking about your greatness. And I think that in our society, it's not common that we talk about people's greatness. It's kind of like in our culture, we downplay it. We diminish, our extraordinary gifts and talents. And it's really leaning in and accepting it and owning it. And I continue to be on that journey. Right now, one of the things I've acknowledged is that today there's probably at least 10,000 people in the world that are going to have a little bit better day because of me, from trainings they've attended in the past, or books of mine that they've read, or videos that they've watched, or coaching that I've done with them. And it's really like leaning in and acknowledging that and accepting that and going, yeah, Eric, you did do that. You have been here for over 25 years, day in and day out, serving people, and to really, really own that. And I think that's what Les was trying to tell me. And, I continue to work on that.
Absolutely. And here's something interesting about Les that I would want to share with you. In 2022, I got to know that he has met with an accident. He fell down. He hurt his ribs, and he was suffering a lot. And I really wanted to do something for him. And I was seeing that there are natural Ayurvedic medicines in India that actually heal such kind of wounds. And I was trying my best. I called him, I spoke with him, and he sent me his address. And I was twice I spoke with him, and I did my best actually to send medicines from India, but that didn't work out. And I was we don't have permissions to send medicines from India to especially Ayurvedic medicines, and there were some technical issues, and I was told that you're not allowed to send medicines. And I tried many different ways, and I sent him a text message later that I'm unable to do that. I'm sorry. So I would again love, through you, I would love to send this message to him that I did my best to send medicines to him. I know that he has healed from that, and through you, I would love to send him this message that I did my best to send him
I
medicines.
will pass that message on, Ranjan.
Yes, and I'll try from my side also, and I request you to do that. And thank you so much, Eric. And finally, the huge announcement that I want to make for my viewers on behalf of you, in our conversation that we were creating this call, and the long game that you suggested, that I really loved the idea. And I would like to tell my viewers that Eric Lofholm, with such a rich, deep experience in transforming lives and transforming your experience of sales, is making a commitment, a very long commitment, a commitment of 2 decades, to work on the Indian market, to help Indian aspirants who want to transform their businesses, transform their sales especially. Eric is here to stay for 20 years. And in our conversation, Eric decided that, Ranjan, let's play a 20-year game. And I'm here to serve with all my experience, all my knowledge, all my expertise, And I'm willing to learn everything about India and the Indian market, and to create everything that it needs to support the Indian sales experts in creating brilliant results. Eric, what would you like to speak on this? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ranjan. And I greatly appreciate the platform here, and also you living over there and being on the ground in India, because without you, there's no way to create this. And so I've been teaching sales now for over 25 years to people all over the world. And I would love to work with the Indian market and get to know what are the differences about the Indian market than here over in the West, and we can learn together. And I'm excited to meet many of you, whether it's over Zoom, or there'll likely be a time for me to fly over and do some in-person training. And but I'm very excited about playing the long game and building deep relationships, and having Ranjan be the hub of it, if you will, the catalyst of it. And it was wonderful to be with you on today's interview. And I love this being the next step, and I love to see where this is going to go, and getting to make a really big impact with great sales ideas on the Indian market.
Thank you so much, Eric. And we are going to work together, and we are going to create some brilliant results together in your 2-decade commitment to India. I've been traveling with you for a long time, and I know how committed you are to sales and sales transformation. And we are sitting on the opposite sides of the planet, but we are connected. We are connected together, and very soon we'll be launching our workshops with you as the facilitator, and with now you coming from the experience of a human-centric, of a being-centered approach to sales, as well as the hardcore sales that you come from, with all the wisdom of the years of sales, and the wisdom that you have drawn from the super leaders and mentors that you've worked with. We would love to bring that to India. And yes, I'm there to support you, to be with you throughout this process. Love this conversation. Thank you so much, Eric, for being the master of the day on this show, Moments with Masters.
You're welcome.
Namaste from India.